How do you know that you're a builder? You know you're a builder when you can stand at a piece of property and you can look at it and you can see the home there before it's ever even built. The way my brain works is if you've seen those computer models where they're throwing in all the boards and then they're putting in all that, then they build this house and all of a sudden it's standing there. That's how my brain works. I can look at a house and I can see every nail, where it goes. My wife thinks I'm crazy. You know you're a builder when you can stand there and look at a piece of property and say, okay, this is what this property needs. This is the style and the size and what's going to fit here. Not take a pre-canned plan that somebody else has designed, or even a client's brought you and say, I want to put it on this lot. Yeah, that's not a good builder. A good builder is going to take the lot, design or build the house around that to make it function for the client.
Welcome to the Builder Straight Talk podcast with your host, Michael Creasa. Get the unfiltered truth from the trenches of construction, real estate, and funding. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.
Every great builder starts with an empty lot, and at first it doesn't look like much. Pile of dirt, maybe some trees, and if you know where to stand, maybe even a good view. But a builder doesn't see what is. He sees what could be. A family gathered around the dining room table, children racing through the backyard, Christmas mornings, graduations, grandchildren. Long before that foundation is poured, a builder is already imagining a lifetime of memories. And the very best builders don't just build homes, they build possibility. My guest today has spent more than 50 years doing exactly that. But his greatest accomplishment wasn't the thousands of homes he built. It was the life he built for himself. Because at 15 years old, he was already on his own. No roadmap, no safety net, just determination. Those early years became the foundation for one of Tennessee's most respected home building companies, and eventually leadership at every level of home building. My guest today is Dan Mitchell, and in this conversation, we explore the difference between building a house and building a healthy home. Why integrity is the one building material you can never afford to cut corners on. The lessons he learned from surviving 18% interest rates. How one unexpected act of support from the National Association of Home Builders changed the trajectory of his career. And why the very best builders don't just build homes. They build the lives their clients haven't lived yet. And if you've ever wondered what separates a good builder from a truly great one, or why some builders leave behind neighborhoods while others leave behind legacy, you're going to enjoy this conversation. Hello, my friend. My name is Michael Creasa, and this is Builder Straight Talk. Our mission is simple: to help you build a better business. And a better business begins with Sound Capital. As in Sound Capital Loans, funding built for builders. You may want to check them out. And speaking of checkout, pretty please, with a simple click of your mouse, hit subscribe, like, and share so more builders can check out what we're doing here at Builder Straight Talk. So once again, pretty please, with your mouse, subscribe, like, and share. And without further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Dan Mitchell. I know you're going to enjoy it. Dan Mitchell, my friend, I want to thank you for taking time out today. I know you're a busy guy. There's so much. When I look at your bio, I figure, how can this guy fit all this into one lifetime? So I'm really thrilled and excited about unpacking this all because it seems you've had quite the journey. So before we get started, first of all, welcome, Dan, to the call. And what if you give us a bit of the backstory? We're on the 10th floor, going down the elevator to the lobby. Tell us who you are, what you build, price point, and where you are.
Sure. Well, I'm a third generation builder, been building ever since I was a boy, walking on job sites at 6 years old. So that gives me a little bit of background in the construction industry. I'm located in East Tennessee, right below the Smoky Mountains. People know it as Dollywood, the Great Smoky Mountains, Gatlinburg. We have a lot of tourists that come from all over the country and all over the world to come to this area. So it started off, I've been a builder, ever since I was in my early 20s, building spec houses in the 80s when the interest rates were crazy, and learned a lot of lessons then, and then moved back to Tennessee. I was in California at that time. Graduated high school, college there, moved back to Tennessee in 1993, where I was born. Moved back into the community in which all my relatives live, which is Sevier County, which I'm related to everybody in Sevier County, as they say in Tennessee. And matter of fact, Dolly Parton's my second cousin. In that context, started building log and timber frames in that particular market because log and timber frames were what people want to see coming to the Smoky Mountains. They turned into small little cabins, from small little cabins into these monstrosities, 8, 10,000 square foot units. that we're building a lot of times for second homes for people in the market. And then that segued into just, building high performance energy efficiency homes. In the late 90s, log cabins weren't the most energy efficient units because of the way that they were built. And I helped develop a lot of the technologies that we use today in order to be able to make them energy efficient. That kind of took me down the path of energy efficiency. Before that was something that was cool. People started using it as buzzwords, green building, and that kind of stuff. So I did a lot of research, a lot of innovation, bringing that into the log home and timber industry. And then that segued into what we're doing now, which are kind of these higher end modern mountain architecture homes. People would notice them if they were in Vail, Colorado, or even coastal type homes with butterfly style roofs, high window ceilings, that kind of stuff. But then taking that technology that I've learned to make those homes energy efficient. And of course, the industry's kind of caught back up to that as well with the standards that they have for windows, making them more energy efficient, the type of units that we're using for heating and cooling, from hydronic systems, radiant floor systems that we're using right now, geothermal, a lot of that stuff, on demand hot water systems, spray foam insulation, LED lights. Just a lot of technology has been brought into the industry. And I've tried to utilize all those technologies as best practices for what we build today.
We kind of throw the term healthy home and performance home back and forth in the industry and kind of conflate the two. Can you separate them and tell me what's the difference between performance and then healthy?
Well, sure. Performance comes down to what it is energy efficiency wise. In other words, how much energy are you using in the consumption of, operating your home? Those are a lot of details that you can get into of, how you live and lifestyle. Of course, if you're in the middle of summer and you open all your windows, you let all your cool air out of your house, well, your home's not that energy efficient. It's about lifestyle as much as it is about what we do with the technology, putting it in place in order to be able to maximize those efficiencies with all the components that go inside the unit. That's one aspect. But a healthy home is completely different, when we start talking about it. It's about VOCs, it's the off gassing of materials that we put inside the homes. It's about eliminating dust and outside debris from coming into the home. How do we kind of make the house into like an igloo cooler to where we can keep the cold or the heat inside and keep everything else outside is kind of the key. So when we talk about, a healthy home, we're looking at other things like the water quality as well. What are we doing as far as treating the water coming inside the house? And, what does that look like? A lot of municipality waters, as much as they say they're pure and they meet a standard, they still need some conditioning to be able to make sure they're completely pure and so forth. So the air quality is another thing that we look at, of course. We try to minimize dust. We use example like built-in vacuum cleaning systems in the house. So if we're building a house, we want to, if they're vacuuming their home, we want to evacuate that dust completely to the outside. HEPA filters, ERVs, recovery systems. There's just a lot of different things that we put into place to be able to make sure the home is healthy. And then, of course, the materials that we're selecting. We're very conscientious. We build hypoallergenic homes for people. In other words, every single piece of material that we look at that goes in there, we're checking it for off gassing. We're checking it for the materials that's being used. We're checking to see if, it's going to have an allergic reaction for somebody. And, we're asking the manufacturers to present us that information because sometimes they don't share that information with us. And then we have to ask, okay, if we use this particular flooring, what glue was used? What off gassing is potential here in this particular home? So, a healthy home is a completely different kind of viewpoint, that we take versus performance on the energy efficient side.
There's a builder that I interviewed out of Arizona. His name is Brian Johnson, and that's his claim to fame is the healthy home concept. And he looks internally and externally. How does that home fit into the area that they're building? Is it like a natural fit, if you will? Can we take advantage of the amenities like walking trails and hiking, kayaking? So he wants it to be almost like a tree that's been replanted in that forest. The other part, and you mentioned the interior side, he's also fixated on Wi-Fi and the interference from electronics. Is that something that you touch on as well?
We've touched on it from, utility poles. In other words, high power lines coming through an area, looking at where we're placing a home, trying to keep them away from that. But I'm being sincere. I've not looked at and never had been asked to look at, what, I want to only use the word off gassing, but I guess it's off electronics from being used inside your home. Interesting concept. I would love to look more into that for sure.
Yeah, I'll hook you up with him after the show here. Really interesting guy. Uh, there was a gal that worked with him. She actually went to Germany to get the designation for healthy home. And apparently that's where it started and migrated into the US. I got to ask this question, completely off topic, Dan. CDI, what the heck does that stand for? Eagle CDI.
It stands for construction and development with integrity. I mean, we everything that we do, we try to put, quality of construction, but everything behind us is the integrity in which we operate. And, for us, the definition of integrity that we tell our clients is this is when we're working on a job site, they're not there. But we are working hard to do the right thing every single day, and that's the integrity. There's in the construction industries, there's a lot of ways to as we get builders get a bad reputation, if you will, for cutting corners and reducing costs and trying to be able to maximize profits. Well, the reality of it is that builders want to build a home that's going to be sustainable, that's going to last a lifetime, and they don't want to have any liability that comes along with that, for callbacks. But the integrity portion of that is doing the right thing when nobody's looking, especially when the client's not there to see the difference between what's it behind the walls, how we nail something together, because so much of the home is literally behind the drywall and you don't get to see it. And, cutting corners in those areas impact the habitability of the home, first of all. And then also too, it impacts the quality of the home and the sustainability. So that word integrity to us is something that we really stand up and try to stand behind as much as possible. We're not perfect. And I use this analogy, and please forgive me for saying the way I'm going to say it if somebody gets offended. But there's only been one perfect person that's walked the face of the planet, in our opinion, and that person, if that person comes back, we don't have anything to worry about to begin with. But the second aspect about that is that it's not going to be anybody that walks on our job site at this moment in time. So we're prone to make a mistake. Things happen. But the integrity portion of that also plays out as, we're also in full disclosure. If something happens, it's not right. We allow the client to know what took place. We give them the solution that we impacted upon that. And then, of course, being transparent and letting them know that we're not perfect, I think goes a long way with them, because contractors that try to go out there and say, we're going to do everything right and make everything perfect, they're giving a false sense of reality to clients, because there's nothing perfect in this world and it's not going to be anything that we do. Doesn't mean that we don't strive to get there. We get above 90%, then we feel like we're doing extremely well.
Yeah. My fault. The caveat should have been, Dan, that there's no filters here. So whatever lane you want to go into, whatever you're going to say, that's fine by me. And I think the gentleman you're referring to, by the way, he was a carpenter, if I'm not mistaken. You're following a good career path, I think.
I hope so. In other words, that's kind of what we endeavor to do is to look in and apply ourselves to, those type of principles. I mean, at the end of the day, we're human beings, we're builders, and we want to build the best product that we possibly can for our clients. And that's what our goal is. I say no more than I say yes, because in like all relationships, you got to be equally yoked. You got to have an equal mindset about what you're trying to accomplish. And then, and I've done this a long time to know that, some clients' expectations for what reality isn't there. And it's being able to identify that and being able to make sure the client understands that. And then sometimes we just have to say, no, we can't be your builder because of these things. And that's sometimes hard for clients to hear. I mean, it really is. They're, what do you mean you don't want to build for us? Well, you're going to be a difficult client. You're going to be difficult to please. And at the end of the day, we're going to become at an impasse, and, we're not equally balanced here. You don't like the way I comb my hair. There's things about me you may not enjoy. And so if you don't have that positive relationship to where you can come together and work hard together, then, there's no need to move forward on a project, especially one that you're going to be married to. And at least 2 years for us from the time we start the project to the time we get it done. And then another 2 years after that for going back, callbacks if there's any issue. And then the state of Tennessee is a total of 7 years for being responsible for the house, its foundation, and everything else. Like in all marriages, you need to start off on the right foot, and starting off on the wrong foot could be problematic.
Well, I think you nailed it right there, because in essence, it is a marriage, because you're learning all their intimate secrets. What is it they want in the home that you're going to build? How does it satisfy their lifestyle? And then throw money into the mix, like in any good relationship. If you want tension, put all those ingredients together and you're walking that fine line.
That's
There's
right.
something, I've got this crusty old neighbor, passed away a few years ago, World War II vet. And he said, how did he phrase it? Talk is cheap. It takes money to buy whiskey. And putting that into context of what you just unpacked here, if I'm not mistaken, 80% of your business is coming from repeat and referral. So that would tell me that, going back to the integrity part, you must have nailed that and made a science of it if the phone keeps ringing from people you've done business with.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things when you start off with, doing the right thing from the very beginning, it's easy to build over years a reputation that you're going to follow through and have clients that are going to come back to you. And the referral from those clients in other words, we've built homes for parents that then we've turned around and built homes for their kids, afterwards. An example just recently is we built a log cabin for a lady in 1998. And she called me just a couple of years ago and says, "Hey, Dan, you remember me?" And I said, "Absolutely, Kay. I remember you very well." She says, "Well, I'm ready to build that garage now on the property." And I'm like, "Okay." And I said, "That's the one going to the left of the house. It's going to be this big, da da da." And she says, "How do you remember that?" And I'm like, "Well, we remember all our clients, so we take the time." So, it is nice to not have to go and chase down and convince people of what we do. They already have that kind of in their back pocket. They're seeking us out because of what we're capable of and the product that we provide in the marketplace.
Let's go back to the first build. When did you first start building? Like officially did you start your own company first? Did you work for somebody first and then evolve into creating your own company?
Oh, well, I'll give you a quick history lesson. Uh, as a kid, I was an entrepreneur, first paper route at, 11 years old, started doing that. By the time I was 12 years old, I had three paper routes. I had a lawn business. By the time I was 15, and this, I know it sounds crazy to people, but I literally moved out of my house when I was 15 years old. I became an emancipated minor. So I learned how to live on my own quickly, which was unique. Went into doing lawn maintenance and stuff like that to support myself, put myself through high school, put myself through college, started a business, right there before I got into college, and where I went to school at, doing lawn maintenance on apartment complexes that were right there in my community. That turned into a commercial landscape business there in California, and then that turned into actually building spec homes, into that market and become a general contractor. That history of time bringing me through the different aspects and being an entrepreneur, taught me a lot of lessons about, one, how to conduct yourself, in a business environment, but also too being able to how to treat customers and how to work with them.
Push back if this is an uncomfortable question, but you've kind of opened the door and I've got to ask. At 15, what was the environment like that prompted you to leave?
My parents weren't the best parents in that at that time in their life. I mean, I was living with my stepdad, and he was in the military, which part of that I think back on my youth and think, okay, well, it was rough and it was difficult, but I was also a very outgoing, hyperactive young man, and so I was probably a little bit more difficult than most to deal with, I guess. At the same time, he was kind of abusive, and then that's what led to me moving out. It was one day I was told if I didn't like it here, that I could leave, and I didn't know that was an option, so I chose to leave. And then everything kind of laid its path out in front of me. But determination, I think, is the biggest factor on who I am. I don't take no for an answer. I take no as an entry, and then we try to find out and solve problems from there. And having a difficult childhood and the military upbringing that I am, I think also made me who I am today, and I'm thankful for it. And a lot of people begrudging their past and their youth, and they want to blame other people for how they've turned out. But the reality of it is, I'm thankful for the life that I've been given. I've been thankful for what I had to go through in order to be where I'm at today.
I think walking through the fire is what tempers you. The archetype in storytelling, there's one that's called the hero's journey, and there's something that's beckoning you, like the grand calling for adventure. And at the tender age of 15, yeah, adventure was calling. Like you're being pushed and pulled at the same time. And to your point, I don't think if you did not choose to follow that path, you would have been a completely different person.
Oh, 100%. No doubt.
Yeah.
And then also too, I gotta thank, wrestling. I had a mentor when I started off. I was a freshman in high school, a coach that looked at me and realized that I had potential. I went out for the football team, and of course, my size, he says, "You're not going to be." I played football. I actually started on the varsity team, but I got killed because of how big I was. And he said, "You need to go out for wrestling." And so that's what I did. And next thing I knew, I found that I had a talent there as well, and had great success. But the discipline in wrestling that I learned helped me be who I am at today. And then, of course, I coached wrestling for almost 20 years in a youth program, AAU, and then that also allowing me to impart some of those same lessons that I've learned on to kids and helping them achieve. And I have to say this, and only because it means a lot to me, is everything that I've done, and Mike, you got to see my resume. It's pretty extensive. Even when I sent it to you, I read, I'm like, "Well, I didn't realize I did all that. Are you kidding me? How did that happen over the last 50 years?" But The reality of it is it pales in comparison. It really does to see the kids that I've helped and made a difference in their lives and the way that they've grown up and the great young men and great young ladies. It really pales. Everything that I've done pales in comparison to being able to help them achieve their goals and their dreams.
I like the wrestling aspect. Let me use that as a metaphor for a second here. So when you're wrestling, you have to size up your opponent. It's about leverage. And that there is physicality involved because you need strength, but you're using their energy against them, kind of like judo, aikido, same kind of thing.
Of course.
If I were to say, did you take any of those principles, and let's jump forward now into what you're doing with your spec building, did you apply those principles into your marketing in the same kind of way that you're assessing your opponent? And I don't mean that in a negative way, but potential buyer until they become a client. And you're leveraging those tactics, if you will, to get them on the mat to become a customer.
I mean, I guess in the back of my mind, subconsciously, of course, absolutely, there's aspects about how you go out and aggressively go and try to market yourself into the place and try to draw clients in. But what I've learned more than that is to listen to my clients. They will tell me what they're wanting, what they see, what they've learned, what they've been exposed to within the construction industry, and I try to dig that information out of them, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And then also too, what aspects about the home that they want, and then how do they live? And so, spending a lot of time up front with a client, listening to what they want, what their expectation is, then that gives me the information until now I know what I can build them that they're going to be happy with. Then I apply that to my marketing effort. In other words, okay, if this is the general consensus of what people are looking for, then I try to put that in there and push it out there. Because, in this industry, there's so many buzzwords, and we talk about green building, sustainability. We talk about high performance energy efficiency, healthy homes. I mean, there's so many of these buzzwords that's going around, and the reality is that most people misinterpret those. They have their own perception of what those are. And so when we talk about the marketing aspect, again, I'm don't have to market much. I mean, I do have a website, but that marketing is basically just showing them what we've already done. And then from my personal point of view is that you know I do a lot of research and I do a lot of information gathering on my own when new products come into the marketplace, when somebody's trying an innovative something, I try to look into that and seeing how I can apply that to my business model. And then I bring that to my clients. And then that's just one more peg, if you will, in my resume of things that we can do and things that we've helped clients with. And so when from a marketing perspective, you know, I'm marketing that or my staff's marketing that when we're having those personal client interviews. So the clients find us, then we start that's when actually the marketing starts taking place. I know it's kind of counterintuitive. You market to get the client. Well, we're already getting the client. Now we have to market what we're doing within that. That way we can develop a budget. And then that way we can build, to one, what their means are, but also two, to what their desires are for their home.
Well, you probably tapped into something, Dan, that you didn't even realize. There is a psychological component called the reticular activator in your
Okay.
brain. So if I were to say, hey, Dan, let's do this lifetime. When was the last time you bought a car?
2 years ago,
What did you buy?
a BMW M8 convertible.
Okay. So when you made that decision, did you do a bit of research first to decide this is the car that you want? What did it have in it? That kind of thing?
Well, 100%. The first thing I went and did is once I realized that's the car, the look of the car is what I saw, and then that's what drove me to it. And there were other cars that I liked at that time that I thought that I would be interested in.
Okay. So here's the key question. Once you've made the decision that this is the car that you want to buy, did you suddenly notice that there were more of them on the road?
Um, Not in that particular instance because there wasn't a lot of that particular car on the road, so I had to kind of go out and find one from a BMW dealership just because of the uniqueness of it. But then, yes, then you do notice similar models of those cars on the road that you didn't really pay attention to, from that standpoint, of course.
So that's your brain. That's your brain kicking in and saying, because you're bombarded by millions of bit of information every second, and your brain has
Right.
to decide what's important. Survival. Let's put it that way. Is this going to kill me? Can I eat it? So in a survival mode, it is parsing the information that's important. To
Right.
that point in your life, that car was important. So suddenly, it's not like more of them are there. You're now aware of the fact that they're there. So if I take this back to what you're doing with your business, and again, 80% referral, your client's reticular activator is now working in overtime and they're thinking all things construction, which is
Right.
the perfect time to plant the seed to say, hey, I build homes and I'm also looking for more people like you. And that's when they become your evangelists, if they will, and they'll start beating the bushes to promote what Dan does.
That's also true. Is it's the so we do what's called a parade of homes here in the Knoxville region, and I've had homes in the parade of homes. But the irony is that my clients, and this maybe sounds crazy, but my clients that I built homes for, even 3 and 4 and 6 years back, still go to the parade of homes to see if my competitors are doing the things that I've been doing, and they go out of their way to tell some of my competitors, hey, well, Dan built our home, or Eagle, and I don't say that's the other thing. And let me say this that I think is fair. My company name is Eagle CDI. It's not Dan Mitchell Homes. It's not Mitchell Builders. It's not my name's not on there. It's an independent corporation that operates. And I have great staff and I have great individuals that work for me, and they're part of a bigger team that makes Eagle run. So it's not my name. Yeah, I'm the glue that keeps it together, but it's not me. It's a whole slew of people that make this process happen. But in that context, my clients go and say, well, Eagle built our home and these are the things that we do. And they're constantly still comparing what we've done to the homes that are in the marketplace now. And I do get my colleagues I've had one in particular call me not too long ago and saying, Dan, would you quit? You know, I, we don't do that spray foam stuff and da da da. So it's
Yeah.
funny that I get that kind of commentary back from the clients.
Well, again, it's a testament to you, and you use that word integrity right at the beginning. It just flows through this entire interview, my friend.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
So the homes that you're building now, I'm trying to juxtapose log homes, which are like these beautiful, big, elegant beasts. And I've always been enamored by the Scandinavian square cut log home. And then you're doing spec builds. Are the log homes part of the spec? Or like, are you building a small subdivision of log homes? Or is it a completely different product that you're doing simultaneously?
First of all, I built only a handful of specs, and I've only done that over the years. In other words, it's kind of my spec home building process is basically to fill in between my custom buildings that I do. But so, first of all, in the log and timber frame homes, it's 100%, custom. There's no spec building in that particular market. We've built spec homes for developers that have then turned around and made them into rental properties and or to sold homes for people. But for us, we don't build necessarily spec homes in the log and timber market at all. Those are all typically high end custom stuff that we're doing. And then now the homes that we do in the current development that I'm working on are all custom, even though I've got a spec home on the books right now to kind of fill in a gap between my foundations. And that's what I do is I try to make sure that my process is flowing. So I don't lose my excavator for a month or 2 months. He goes on to another project and then I can't get him back. So I'm constantly looking at, a year, 2 years, and even 3 years down the road about what's in my pipeline, what am I producing, and then how am I scheduling that to make sure that I can keep all my trades in line. And I think that's also, the way I look at the business has helped me and with the success, because you're only as good as your trade contractors and their availability to get something done. And because we do schedule the way we do, and because we do pay the way we do, we have a lot of loyalty. I'll give you my plumber example has been with me for 20 years. And that says a lot. His business has grown exponentially over the years, but I'm still his number one client, even though he does multi-million dollars worth of business. I don't do that much with him. He still treats me as I'm his number one client because I'm the one who got him to where he is today.
When you talk about your pipeline, have you already got an inventory of land ready to go at any given time?
Because I'm a developer also, I'm constantly out looking for property, that's out in front of us, to make it sure that I have it's kind of like this. I never relied on making sure that clients had property in order to be able to build. If you're a custom builder and you're relying on individuals to have property, a lot of times that could leave gaps in your schedule. So if you could provide property and you could have that, I learned this early on in my construction career. If you could have property to where it's ready to go, you're always going to have a client that's going to be wanting to take on one of those lots. Now, there's two aspects about that. Now, I've developed property and sold it. In other words, put all the roads and infrastructure and then turned around and sold it to another builder, 50, 60 units that I was going to build in, but those things but I just sold it all out, wholesale to somebody else. But then I've also, like the development I'm in now, bought it and got everything put in. And then I only release a certain amount of units over a period of time in order to maintain inventory for myself in case I need to be able to sell it. And then fill in my custom stuff takes the dominant of my workforce. And then I use my property as the fill-ins to put those units on the ground so I can maintain my schedules.
Okay. So talk to me like I'm six here, Dan, for me to understand. When we're talking custom, you've got a client that basically calls you, shows up on your doorstep and says, "Hey, I want you to build me a 3,000 square foot log home. And here's kind of the idea that I had." Or maybe you've got blueprints that you can share. You work on that process to design what the perfect home is. They give you money, you proceed with the grace of God, you start building that thing. When I talk about spec, I'm looking at Dan puts his hand into his pocket and starts funding builds that you're hoping to sell
Correct.
without having, so you're doing a very limited side of the spec, but you're focused more on the custom. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, got it. All right. Is there anything, when I look back to when you first started, what would you say is the big aha moment that you realized, hey, I am actually a builder and I'm doing this now for a profession? Was there that moment that I'm no longer just messing with this, I'm actually doing this?
Well, yeah, in the late '80s, I have to go all the way back to there. I started building my first spec house in California, and doing commercial landscaping as a business, was is one thing, but I did a lot of residential landscaping, and then I realized at that point is that I didn't just want to do the last job on the job site. I wanted to do the first job in the job site, which is actually build the home and then add the landscape to it. Of course, then that segued in, well, if I'm going to do that, might as well develop the whole property, put all the roads in and do all that as well. Took that next step. No, but the reality is in the late '80s when I finished my first spec house and I got done with it. And I remember standing in the living room going, hey, I built this. And all of a sudden that was a sense of accomplishment because when you're going through the process, you're not analyzing, oh, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm doing it. You're just doing it. And then, like I said, I got to that point to where I was standing in the living room and looked at it and thought, hey, I built this. And then I thought that was really cool. I'm now, quote, officially a builder because I've completed a unit. Now, mind you, interest rates went to 18%, and I thought that I would never be a builder again. I was going to live underneath an underpass because at the time, trying to sell a spec house at 18% was
Yeah.
crazy. I thought I'm going to bankrupt. But that's also another lesson learned. I mean, you learn lessons through those adversities and you realize it. But yes, that was kind of the epiphany moment. And then it was like, once I had that as I am, then it was now what else can I do? Then all of a sudden you start having visions of grandeur. It's like, oh, I want to develop a golf course. As an example, put all the homes in there. And I've been very blessed to develop some great properties and doing some stuff over time that I'm very proud of. Again, great teamwork to make it happen. But having a vision, I think that's the other side of the coin here. I think the real question is how do you know that you're a builder? You know you're a builder when you can stand at a piece of property and you can look at it and you can see the home there before it's ever even built. And you can literally, the way my brain works is if you've seen those computer models where they're throwing in all the boards and then they're putting in all that, then they build this house and all of a sudden it's standing there. That's how my brain works. I can look at a house and I can see every nail, where it goes. My wife thinks I'm crazy. You know you're a builder when you can stand there and look at a piece of property and say, okay, this is what this property needs. This is the style and the size and what's going to fit here. And not take and you talked about the design aspect, not take a pre-canned plan that somebody else has designed, or even a client's brought you and say, I want to put it on this lot. Yeah, that's not a good builder. A good builder is going to take the lot, design or build the house around that to make it function for the client.
I would take that even one step further, Dan. I would imagine you're the kind of guy that can already see the family having barbecues in the backyard. The kids are playing basketball in the
Yes.
driveway, and you've already kind of figured out how does the elevation work that's going to accommodate this family that I haven't even met yet.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. You get to know your client. You got to know who you're building for, because if, like you said, if you're building for two people and you're designing it for a family of six, you're going to miss the mark, as the example. And this is what I tell clients now. How you live today is not how you're going to live in the house tomorrow, because the way you live in your house today is dictated by how your house was built. So now your lifestyle, where your lifestyle is going, are you, moving into a empty nester, or is this something that you're doing? So your lifestyle is going to be different there. You're not going to have kids. Are you moving into, for a full family, you're going to add kids to this? And what do we need to do? Or, what are your hobbies? Are you a car collector? Are you a teapot collector? Or what is it that you do? Or do you like to do art? I mean, are you a piano player? I mean, I've had every single aspect. Well, I shouldn't say everything, but I've had so many different things thrown at me that people do with their life that we then build their house around to be able to make it more accommodating. And I think that also adds to our success is, listening to what your clients tell you how they live now and being able to kind of extrapolate that into the future and how they're going to live. And then again, being fair, building so many different variety of homes for different family sizes and styles, you also learn, what families are doing. And then, of course, me having my own family and growing up with my own kids, which I have four of, you, you also learn what, you definitely want all the kids' bedrooms on the opposite side of the house for whatever reason, So there's things that you apply to that, of course. It is something that you have to either inherently know or that you learn over time and you have to apply. And I think that our industry gets a little lost right now because especially on the custom building side, there's some great custom builders. Some of my colleagues, I think, do some wonderful products, out there, and they do take that time. But then I have a lot of other colleagues of mine that are getting into the industry, and it's all about the money and it's not about what they're building for the client. And subsequently, they build a product that at the end of the day doesn't meet their client's needs. It's beautiful. Yeah. But it's kind of like having the fanciest car in the world, but you can't drive it. Here's a good example. You get given a car that's a stick shift and you don't know how to drive a stick shift. And it's a Ferrari. It's a really nice car, but you can't drive it because you don't know how to drive stick shift. And you get into
Yeah.
it and all you do is grind the gears and get frustrated.
Yeah, you and I, we're thinking along the same path. I used to use a metaphor about having a Porsche in the driveway. Beautiful car. The potential is unlimited. But if I don't know how to drive standard, I'm just sitting in the driveway listening to the stereo and
That's right.
haven't even come close to the tap potential. You've kind of opened this, and I want to touch on it a bit. You've been a successful builder, still are, current tense. What is the thing that you think builders are getting wrong right now? Like, if you could take somebody by the neck and give them a good shake, what would Dan's advice be? Like, man, you're missing the point here. Let me tell you how Dan does it.
Oh, wow. I have these conversations a lot with my clients or my colleagues a lot, because they're coming to me and asking me, well, why am what have I done to be successful? Which is opposite of what are you doing wrong? I guess in that sense. And so I don't try to highlight what they're doing wrong. I just look at what I've been doing that works for us and then share that information with them. And why don't you try this? And the first thing, I tell all my clients or excuse me, not clients, but colleagues is do a background check. Spend $100 with some entity and have your potential client sign off a waiver saying you're going to do a credit check, you're going to do a background check on them, just like you would do. If they were applying for a credit card for $500, they would have to jump through 50 different hoops, provide the social security card, everything down the line, everything about them would be online, their credit report, their history. And the reason I say to do that is because you'll learn a lot from a credit report. You can see whether they pay their bills, what issues that they've had. And it doesn't mean that you disqualify somebody because they had some issues way in the past and now they're, fix that. But what it does is give you an overview. But also, too, if you're doing a background check and you see that they've been involved in multiple litigations or issues such as that, well, that could be a path that you could be going down as well. So that's first is, find out who your client is. Know your client before you start and then sign your name at the bottom line, because that's the biggest thing that costs you more money, more time than anything else is to work with a client that is one that you can't get along with. Now, I'm going to be honest and tell you that, even though I've done that, I still have been in issues where I had to go out and collect money against a client. And that's the other side of the coin is you can't let a client take advantage of you from a monetary perspective because it's your livelihood. So yeah, getting to know your client, I think is the most important thing that you can do from a business perspective. Because, like I said, you spend a lot of time, effort, and money in a litigation aspect, even if you're trying to collect money, that takes you away from running your business. So that's first. The second thing is that I think that builders don't spend enough time with is their client on the front end. In other words, getting to know your client to the extent of, you know, what are their interests? What are their hobbies? What do they like to do? Where do they go on vacation? What are all the things? And all those things start playing out in your mind about what they're going to want for fit and finish. In other words, if they love going to the museum and they love, seeing everything being perfect and all those lines, well, then that their expectations are going to be, higher. And not that I'm afraid of, client having high expectations. I have high expectations when I'm paying $1 million. So I expect that. At the same time, you want to know what those expectations are and spending the time with them so you can make sure that you're laser focused on what their desires are as much as what their needs are. And then that's the last thing is that you need to really understand what their needs are. And again, I made the statement earlier, it's not what their needs are today and how they live today, but also how they're going to live in the future. If you don't understand that, then you can't provide them a product that's going to be able to service them in the future and then prepare for that future for expansion, whether it's their families expanding, designing a home to where you can add on to it, designing a home to where you could take walls out if they want to open up a floor plan, and looking at what the future is going to hold as much as what you're doing for them today.
Has there been, and I'm sure there has been, a home that you built, maybe it was a log home. You've got a particular set of clients, and there's something that they want that has really made you think, like you had to step back and say, I don't even think that could be done. But then you have that epiphany, you know what? Maybe we can pull this off. Has there ever been a moment like that that has challenged you to that extent? Or
All
is
the
that every
time.
day?
All the time. I mean, well,
Yeah.
clients ask for things, and then all of a sudden, well, I'll give you one example that's leading to another example right now here that's current. Several years back, I had a client. We were building this big log timber frame home up on the side of the mountain in Gatlinburg, $1 million view. The house grew exponentially to what it started off with. It was going to be a little 3,000 square foot unit, turned into almost a 6,000 square foot unit with a basement and some other stuff. And so it took up quite a bit of the land space on the side of a mountain in order to build this thing, which that was a challenge within itself, just the location. Then the client comes and says, we're 3/4 of the way with the house. He says, man, I have to have a garage. And I'm saying, Joe, we don't have space for a garage here. We're on the side of a mountain. And he says, I got to have a garage. He says, Dan, I don't care what it takes. I got to have a garage. And I'm like, okay. So literally, I designed and built a garage, 3-car garage at that, with a small little living area above it because he needed that after we started so his kids can have someplace to stay. That literally hung over the side of the mountain. I mean, when I say it hung over the side of the mountain, you drive up there today in Gatlinburg, you see a garage that's hanging out over the side of the mountain. I cantilevered it back into the mountain. I mean, the way that I did it, engineering and everything else, when that was one of those issues where, I value engineered it as I went along and actually saved a lot of money. But at the same time, when in the beginning, I thought there's no way that I could do this. And then, I thought, well, wait a minute. I'm the builder. There's got to be a way because if there's enough money, there's a way.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I executed and built it. Now, fast forward to today, literally this week. Matter of fact, if we get done with this phone call, I'm going to go to the site and we're going to be laying out a swimming pool that is going to be doing the same thing. That's going to be literally cantilevered. Garage is a little different, but a swimming pool with the amount of weight that's going to be cantilevered and held out over the side of a hill because there's no other way that I could see to do it other than to make that happen. So it's going to be interesting to get that one done as well. But all the time the clients are coming to you, and presenting ideas to you. They've seen something on TV or they've seen. Let me phrase this the wrong way. One of the worst things for a client to do is to spend a lot of time trolling the internet because they see all these things. And then on the internet, they show these things that, especially how they've been built, they start and then, in a 25-minute video that took, 6 months to actually execute, they build something. And then the client says, I want that. And it's like, yeah, well, that's going to take 6 months. Well, they built it in 25 minutes on the internet. So, setting expectations is another aspect, but the reality of it is that clients look at a lot of that information, they see it, and then they want to bring it to bear. Now, we're more than willing to look at anything that they bring. At the same time, we have to be realistic to what that budget is, and then also scheduling. I can't tell you how many times I've had to say no to a client because we were too far into where we were at to be able to add an addition or to, expand a floor plan or something like that. I'm like, look, I'm sorry, but this is we just can't. Permitting requirements, setbacks, whatever it may be.
What would be, again, talk to me like I'm 6 years, just a spitball estimate when you're building with log per square foot? Are you $700 a square foot? What is there a benchmark?
Well, it's kind of like asking me how much does a car cost per pound.
Yeah.
It really comes down to, I mean, where you're building it at. I mean, that's the foundation. And some of the foundations, I mean, I'll give you an example. I had $1 million into the foundation before I ever put the first log on the home. So price per square foot of that unit was expensive. But then the view that they had was worth $1 million. And so the property and the view coupled the reasoning, if you will, for the price to build it. But in essence, it's what the box is. In other words, if you're building a box, depending on the log styles, the size, and everything else, that's is. But it's really the amenities. About 50% of the cost of the home actually goes into amenities. If, as an example, if the client walks in and says, "I want a gold-plated faucet," that costs $8,000. True example. Well, price per square foot in that kitchen just went exponentially up. But in general, in this market right now, on the low end, it's about $400 a square foot, depending on size, style, and everything else. And, I've built them as much as $1,200 a square foot with a lot of stuff like that going in that adds cost into it as well.
Gold faucet. What are you dealing with? Iranian oil sheiks or who's your clientele, man?
This would probably get me in trouble. The way that I'm going to say this is that, a lot of times because of the size and style of homes that we build, man, this is gonna get me in so much trouble. I can already hear the backlash. I have clients that come to me, like doctors or professors or people that are high end professions that make really good money. And the wife wants a house, they want it to be their way. And so the wife drives some of these decisions. And from a practical matter, sometimes the husband doesn't have the ability to say no to some of the requests that a wife may make. And I'm going to be fair, sometimes it's the husband too. He'll want something that, he wants his man cave and he's willing to spend $150,000 to have all the latest, greatest technology that goes into it, golf simulator, everything else. So it's a two-way street there. But yeah, it's typically a client that, that has has the means in which to pay for something, and it's just what they want. I mean, it's what they want, and they're willing to sacrifice. That's the other thing that I've learned with clients and getting to know clients is they're willing to sacrifice on other areas to get exactly what they want in one area. So when I'm looking at a home holistic approach, I look at it as a bucket of money, and I don't, and this goes without saying that whether I want to be fair, I still build some entry level homes for some people. It's very few, but it's for clients that I know that I can make a difference to. So whether I'm building a home that's $400,000 or I'm building one that's $4 million, the client's the same. They have the same amount of restrictions on their budget. And just because they're spending $4 million doesn't mean they're not trying to stay within a budget. So I'd look at it as a holistic approach. You got this bucket of money, and then we're going to allocate money to given areas. And so, what are the important areas in the bucket that we need to make sure we're drawing from, and what's not the non-important areas, and then put the monies into those things. But I have had clients that absolutely adamant about something in the house that they wanted, and it didn't matter. It wasn't a matter of how much it costs. It was whether or not I would say yes and or I could actually physically make it happen for them.
I'm going to frame this question for a moment. It's like pretending you're a Hollywood movie star, and every movie star has made brilliant movies, box office hits. But there's always that one smoking turd that they don't want to think about.
Right.
And you know where I'm going with this, Dan. Like in your career right now, it seems like everything's just been roses, perfect house, perfect location. Has there ever been that one build that you just thought, man, I should have been working at McDonald's? Like everything's gone south. Somehow you salvaged it. But is there one that sticks out and you think, oh man, this is putting me through the ringers, challenging everything that I thought I knew about building?
Well, yeah, going back to what I was saying about doing a background check, I got in. That's where I learned that lesson the hard way. Working with a client that I should have done a little bit more research on, gave me a very difficult build at first, what it was. A lot of challenges to be able to get the unit built, just getting it out of the ground. In other words, municipality hurdles that I had to jump through. This particular client used every aspect of my knowledge, expertise, ability, and exploited that. I was younger and I wasn't smart enough at that time to recognize I was being exploited. And even at the point to where we got to the finish line and recognizing, he basically we were 80% completed with the home and he says, "Okay, you got it to where I need it. I'm going to finish it. I know I owe you a couple $100,000, but you're done. I'm taking over from here." And so when you talk about the turd, it was the difficult process, first of all, to get it to where it was there. Then the difficult client, going through that. I mean, every single step of the way. And when I say every single step, it was it was like you just said, why am I doing this? I'm spending huge amounts of time, effort, and energy on this one client that I shouldn't be doing. They're difficult. And then the process, the construction process is difficult. Everything about it was difficult. And then in the end, I had to seek litigation to actually collect the money in the end.
Wow.
So when you talk about that, those are the bad one. That's the bad one of all the ones I've done. But the reality of it is that because I've also placed the integrity in the very front end of my process here and doing it from the very beginning, have I had failures? I'll give an example. We built a very large custom log cabin up in the Gatlinburg Mountains where we had a foundation failure. I mean, literally the basement of the wall and the foundation actually was pushed in. And it was an engineering error and it had to do with the concrete capacity and everything else. Not necessarily our fault, but at the same time with the general contractor. And that was very difficult because the people were living there. Their houses literally could potentially fall off the side of the mountain. And so those are the things that, I liability is always something that I'm concerned about. Ultimately, it turned out great. The client was super happy because we literally jacked their house up off the foundation, fixed the foundation, put everything back the way that it was, didn't charge them a thing, and said, here's your house back and made it whole again. Was it inconvenient for 6 months for them? Yes. But in the end, still to this day, I get a Christmas card from them every year thanking me for what I did for them because they realized that even at that point, I could have just said, "Oh, it's not my problem." It was 3 years after the fact. I could have said, "Oh, your warranty's done, everything else not my problem." But instead, I stood up and took care of it and made it right for them.
I'm making a note here. Never build on a mountain. Seems like a simple
No,
thing to say,
no, don't say
like,
that. It's,
yeah,
like I gotta, in all fairness, I've been doing it for almost 30 years. So having one or two down the pathway is percentage wise, that's less than a percent, on overall issues. But we've
man.
built, we've built 400 or 500 units that have been very successful.
At what point in your career did you realize, okay, things are really going great? I am an established builder. My customers love me. Was there, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a yearning? Was there an emptiness that then kind of propelled you to explore a path in leadership, hence joining the National Association of Home Builders? What was the draw that initially pulled you into that?
Well, being very fair, it was going all the way back to the house that we just talked about a second ago. I was a member of my local home builder association. This was back in 1998. That's how far back this went. I was a member of the local home builder association because, and again, I didn't know the National Association of Home Builders. I I just knew my local home builder association in my community, and that was, of course, to network with trade contractors, electricians, plumbers, and because that's how we all can join together. And I thought, being a part of that would be good for my community, as part of the association, and then leveraging that. Anyway, so I got into that issue with this home, and realized that I was going to be involved in a high cost litigation aspect. And in 1998, being owed $200,000, not that that's not a lot of money today, but back then that was a lot of equivalent dollars now would be almost about $800,000 in dollar values. So I knew that had my hands full and I didn't have the resources that I had today, in order to be able to stand up and defend it. So I thought at that time it was going to cost me my company. So I was at a home builder meeting at my local home builder association, mentioned it to my executive officer there, and they said, "Well, you're part of the National Association of Home Builders." And I said, "Yeah, okay. What does that mean?" Well, the National Association of Home Builders has a legal action fund, and you know, your particular issue here, the what's happened, has national implications, and they would probably be willing to look at this and help you with this case. And so, literally that year, 1998, I flew to DC at that time where we're having a summer meeting and met with them. I'll fast forward here, explain my case and everything else. They gave me $75,000. NAHB did. I'm a hillbilly builder in Tennessee, young guy back when I used to have dark hair, as you see in some of my profile pictures. Young, I was a kid. I mean, I was 30, almost 40 years old, 30 something years old. The fact that, and I'm going to get choked up here, the fact that they recognized as a member that I needed help and they stepped up to the plate and put that amount of money forward. That's the moment that I realized that, I was part of something bigger. In other words, there's an industry here. I'm not just doing my little section here in my little world, think I'm a little builder, but there's a huge industry here supporting all of us that are doing what we did. And so literally at that moment in time after that happened, I recognized that, I was going to commit myself to giving back to that entity, for there. And then, so that's opened up the door to that long resume of things, of stuff, and that service that I provided. And I don't regret any minute of that whatsoever. Matter of fact, I'm grateful to have the opportunity to represent my fellow builders across the country, and of course, my state as being the state president and chaired multiple committees on the national level as well. And that's the other thing a lot of people don't realize is that NAHB as a member, we don't get paid to do this stuff. We don't get paid to be an HBA president or a state president or national chairman or anything of those things. We volunteer our time to give back to the industry. So the answer to your question is that epiphany came at that particular moment in time, and they were willing to do that for me. Then I knew I was going to commit myself to them, and I have been ever since.
Let's go back to that moment. How did it make you feel that for lack of a better word, a humble banjo playing hillbilly from Tennessee? You're in Washington, and they actually look at you and say, there's something to this guy. We're here to help. How did that make you feel?
Well, going in there, I didn't have any expectations that they would do anything at all. I mean, matter of fact, I felt defeated before I ever walked in that door. So that's one thing. So the fact that they listened to me first, I mean, they took the time to listen to me and listen to my issue, that they were willing to listen to my issue made me feel really good. It's like, okay, well, at least they're willing to listen because they didn't have, who do you talk to about something like that other than an attorney? You're kind of on an island. So they listened and then they asked me particular questions, and then, I didn't find out until a week later that they were going to commit the funds to doing this. But the minute that they committed funds, you talk about, get choked up here, but the relief that I had somebody on my side that was willing to fight with me, not for me, but with me in this particular issue. Well, I dropped down on my knees and thank God that that was the case. And because that's rare. I mean, just going to tell you that those situations and what I was facing was rare. And so it was an answered prayer in one aspect. At the same time, it's what the Federation does. I mean, and I say it's an answered prayer for me, but from the Federation standpoint, it's why they were established in order to be able to make sure that builders throughout the country that are members are protected. So, again, my feeling on it was elation for myself, but then the realization of they're not doing it just because it was my plea. It is what their edict was and responsibility is to protect the builder members. And that's what really stood out to me. That feeling of that they stood up to the plate, they invested the money. And again, and I say this, it wasn't National Association of Home Builders money. It's members' money. Members' dues across the country paid for that litigation, just like my dues today pays for other issues that they may be addressing. So I recognized really quick that it wasn't, this entity that had buckets of money that was throwing. I realized that it was members' dollars, actual members' dollars, just like myself, that were collected in a pool that then were dispersed to be able to help me. So again, that's committing myself back to my local members because I recognized that each one of their monthly payments or their annual payments contributed to my ability to be able to stay in business.
As you were reliving that moment, Dan, it brought back a memory of it's a religious, I don't know, not a parable, but so let me walk through it. It's a guy having a conversation with Jesus, and they're walking on the beach, and he says, "Jesus, whenever things are great, I see there's two sets of footprints in the sand that you've always been walking beside me. But when things got really tough, when I look back, I only see one set of tracks. Where were you?" He says, "What you don't realize, there's one set because I was carrying you." And that makes me think of what you just shared here with your experience with National, that when times were tough, there was one set of footprints because they were helping you along the way when you needed it the most. Is that a good summary?
100%. I mean,
Wow.
I could use multiple examples of that, of course. Yeah, but 100%. I mean, I recognize, you know, there's another. I got to give you this quick story so you can appreciate this. In 2019, I was put into the hospital, not knowing what was going on. I was at Disney World with my grandkids, and my back started hurting. Of course, my I got up the next day. My wife said, "Well, you shouldn't have been carrying the grandkids around all day. I told you you're going to hurt your back." I said, "No, sweetheart, it's something different." By 6 o'clock that night, I couldn't walk. I was kind of paralyzed. I was put and I had to be wheeled in a wheelchair. By 6 o'clock the next morning, I was on a med flight from Orlando back to Knoxville. And by that later that afternoon, 6 o'clock that evening, I was in an ICU ward. And then I stayed in that ward for over 45 days. The long story short is I got MRSA inside my spinal column somehow, paralyzed me from the waist down, and told I was going to die. When you recognize that your life is fragile and that you recognize that it's not your own, and you're running through life thinking that I'm invincible, all of a sudden something like that takes you completely down. Now, not to say that I've never gotten sick or injured before, but it was always one of those things. I just had the mindset that, oh, I'll get over this. In that particular instance, I had my attorney come in, my kids came in, I'm signing all my death papers.
Man.
Think about that. You're alive and you're signing your, okay, this is what's going to happen. So, by literally the grace of God and a miracle, true miracle, and the prayers throughout the country, I didn't see my cell phone for 6 months. And then there was a point to where I was actually unconscious for quite a while. Got out of the hospital, had to learn how to walk again. And that's when three things happened. One, I knew that God had a bigger plan. Two, that I'm not as valuable in my own mind as I think I am. That my business was able to sustain itself because I put the right people in place to be able to do that. And then the last thing is that there is a God, because true miracles truly happen on a regular basis. And if you open your eyes and you're willing to look at that, you'll see them. But it amazes me how many people walk through life with blinders on and can't see anything except what's right in front of them.
Man, I don't know where to go from here, Dan. I wanted to say something about Jim Tobin, but going from God to Jim, that would inflate the ego that he already has. But
Jim's
and
a good friend of mine, so anything that we say, give me opportunity to hammer him back with it. I would love that.
one of the benefits of this podcast is I've met some, well, like you, I've met these wonderful people and got to share in the stories that tell. Jim is one of those guys, the same thing. I worked relentlessly to connect with him to get him on the show. And once I did, we were like two little kids goofing off. It was the greatest experience. And that kind of opened the doors, if you will, to all the other members in national and state. And
Right.
it's like a parade at Disney. So I guess where I'm going with this, let's do a shout out to Jim. What would be Dan's top 5 things of why you need to be a member of your local association?
Well, first, let's start with Jim. I've known Jim for many, 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 many years. When I first started involved in NHB, somehow I met Jim a few years after being involved there. Of course, he was young too and up and coming. He was a government affairs guy, and we hit it off, and we got to know each other quite well. And then again, when the opportunity for him to take over NAHB as the CEO, if you will, I was a huge advocate for that because of his personality and his belief in his members. This is where this is going to come, answering your question in an indirect way. The belief in his members, knowing that the Federation had more to serve. In other words, I'm going to say this, NHB got up to a point to where it got so big and it got so massive, and but it kind of got stuck in its own little bubble in the DC. And it kind of forgot about the members that were supporting it, on the grassroots level, the small HBAs that had 20, 30 members that, they still send their dues in. Those kind of got lost by the wayside, and the bigger HBAs were dominating everything on the national level. Jim took it upon himself to make the statement is that every member counts, no matter where they're at, no matter how small they are, no matter how small their HBA is. And he took it personal. And then he also set out a program to be able to make sure that all the senior officers and all the senior staff, along with that are there, to get out and go and visit, go to the grassroots, go to those small HBAs. You know, and I know Jim for a fact has gone to an HBA that had less than 40 members as the CEO of NAHB and had a huge impact on that HBA. So that philosophy, Jim coming in, taking over has made a huge difference in the organization. And now I can answer the question. It's because of that philosophy at the very top and that mindset to provide service to its members and find exactly how they can leverage everything that they do at that national level down to the local level is the number one reason that, a person should be involved. Number two reason is that you're part of an industry. If you're going to be part of an industry that's supporting you, and then you have people such as myself that are going out and fighting on your behalf, and I'm very involved with public affairs, government affairs. I meet with my local legislators on a regular basis, my state legislators on a regular basis, and then of course my national senators and congressmen on a regular basis, advocating for our members. But there's people like me that get up every day that fight that fight for them. And those that are in the industry that aren't supporting that, and the support is through numbers. The more numbers we have, the more influence we have with those individuals. It's just math. And I've had individuals tell me that I've tried to recruit, says, well, you guys going to do that anyway. I don't need to sign up. And my answer to them, I said, that's fine. I said, then you're just like a tick. I said, because here's the dog that's running. I said, you're the tick. You're sucking the blood, and you're living off of everything that we do in order to be able to. I said, but you're not going to do anything to support, you know, the industry. And then subsequently, I said, the really thing is, I said, as a tick, you're a parasite. So you're living off of the good that we're doing. And then the reality of it is you're actually hurting us because you're giving us a disease because you're not helping us. And when I say that to individuals, one, I've made a couple mad, like, you can't call me a parasite. I said, well, that's what you are. You either sign up and to become part of the solution here, or you're a parasite, you're living off of it. But then the other aspects about it is that there's so many things that National does, from rebate programs that, I could show, new members how to pay for their membership 5 times over. But then the networking opportunity, being able to meet with your fellow colleagues, to be able to discuss different issues. Again, as sometimes as a builder, we think that we're on our own little island here, that we don't have any resources that we could turn to. We feel stuck. But some of the biggest issues that I faced in my past, I've been able to help get resolved because I've developed relationships with colleagues all over the country that I could pick up the phone right now and say, hey, I could call Jim right this minute, and he would answer my call and say, Jim, I've got this issue. One, he knows I'm only going to call him if I've got something that's important. But two, it's they will respond and they're willing to help. And I think the last thing that relates to that is from, becoming a member is you've put yourself in a business that your success and everybody else's success is predicated on your best practices. And how do you know what your best practices are unless you see what other people's best practices are out there? And I'm not saying that you need to compare yourself to other builders, but you do. You need to compare yourself. And I constantly, and I appreciate the kind words that you've given me. I really do. But I still look to improve every single day. And I'm always looking into seeing, and I don't want to say what my competitors are doing because I don't look at them as competitors, look at them as colleagues in the industry. But what are they doing? What things have they brought to the market? What things have they been successful at? And then try to pull those things into my business model and apply those as equally as they have. And I think that that's what makes us successful. And if you don't have that resource to go to or ability to talk to or being able to be involved with your fellow colleagues, then you're not going to grow as a business and you're going to kind of go stale. Matter of fact, I'd venture to say, and I've seen builders come and go because they didn't get involved and they tried to do it on their own. And this industry is way too big. and the number of people that we need to employ and the business aspect is way too big for us to do this on our own. We need the help of an organization like an AHB to be able to support us. And then of course, our local HBAs, that's support that we get from the local, and then our state fighting for legislative issues. I don't think there's a state in the union right now that isn't trying to put some type of regulatory burden on the construction industry on an annual basis. And it takes us to push back against that and apply common sense to whatever it is. Health and safety is everything to us. At the same time, regulations that don't have a benefit that are just going to cost the client money, but make other people money in the industry, I think need to be fought against.
Yeah, you've just sparked a couple thoughts there. Once upon a time, I used to write copy, and I was really big into internet marketing, and I belonged to a mastermind group, and we met 4 times a year in Tempe, Arizona. And I paid 20 grand a year to be a part of that group. And I had access to giants, like literally these were industry giants. And sure, I could forge my way through the forest on my own, cutting down all the little trees, or I could follow the path that these guys have already blazed for me. And state and national are doing the same thing. You have access to this mastermind, a brain trust of
That's right.
builders that will share with you. It's not like here, drink from this cup. They're giving you the whole well to go
That's right.
to. And the other point that you mentioned, and this is something Jim said, like it or not, government advocacy, our government is coming for you.
That's
Like
right.
it or not, government is coming for you. And it's reflected in the fact that 26% of what a home is right now, the cost of a home, is red tape and regulation.
Of course.
26%. So, yeah, that's why you need to be a part of this. But okay, I see the airport ahead of us, landing gears down, my friend. I want to do a quick lane change right now. And I call
Okay.
this rapid fire. And I'm just going to ask you a question. First thought that comes to head, finish the sentence.
All right.
Ready? Okay. Best investment every builder should make.
And to their employees,
Most overrated trend in home building.
open floor plans.
Most underrated opportunity in building.
Ooh, building homes for first time home buyers.
The one habit that's contributed most to my success.
I've got multiple habits. That's a really difficult one for me. Belief in myself.
The builders who will dominate the next decade are the builders who.
Engage the technology in such a way to be able to build a better product at the end of the day. The technology is going to be leading our industry, but it's still coming down to employees. Investing into the employees and using the technology to maximize the efficiencies.
We're going to have to do a part 2. There's so much I haven't done yet. When I finally get that rare hour to myself, what I do to recharge is.
Well, two things. One, when I need to get away from my business, I go play golf because as I turn my cell phone off, it gives me 4 hours of something to do physically, which I need, but also at the same time, it gets me away from my office. It's something completely different to focus on.
Okay.
But the other side of that is I spend time with my wife because she's my balancing point. She's my equilibrium. She keeps me, as I could be a little high strung and a little outgoing at times. She keeps me, grounded of who I am, and she's real quick to point out, saying, "Hey, well, yeah, you may have all those plaques and resumes and all that stuff, but you're still Dan to me, so that means
I-
everything."
Interesting. You're the big kite, but she's the string that keeps you grounded. I like that. I
She's
like
the
that.
wind, as my eagle would say on the wall up there too. She's the wind beneath my wings. Without her, I couldn't fly.
Very good. A favorite book or a quote or a movie that has left a lasting impression on me is.
One that I just read recently, it's called Yes. It changes everything. Coming to the mindset of yes. When you start being able to say yes for the right reasons, it really makes all the difference in the world.
Once people really get to know me, they'd be surprised that
That I'm like this all the time. People think that I'm a certain way when I'm out in public and I'm a certain way. No, this is me. I'm completely transparent. I have no hidden agenda. I get that a lot. What are you really about, Dan? What are you who are you really? And no, this is 100% of the time. This is who I am 100% of the time.
Okay, last one. I'm going to dig into this. What's a thoughtful gift somebody could give you that would genuinely make you smile?
That was a recent gift from a client that genuinely made me smile. This is somebody that went out of their way, got it from South Africa, and brought it all the way from there to here as a client.
What is that? Is it a
Or
bone?
better, I'm all about patriotism, red, white, and blue. You can see my logo. It's all about that. My red shirt, everything is about that. But I got to show you this. This is an ornament that if you can see the detail of it,
Wow.
this is all hand done. And if you can look really close, it's got eagles on it. It's all individual beads that was handmade. So this lady's probably spent, her name is Mrs. Palmer. I love her to death. She probably spent 50 hours to make this for me. So talk about it not just make me smile. And again, in fairness, it's not just makes me smile. It's the fact that somebody thought about me enough, that cared about me enough to spend their personal time to do something like this for me. I mean, this is handmade and it's as exquisite as anything that you could buy at Neiman Marcus or any place else in the world.
Man, that is so nice. I've got one more
Yes.
for you, Dan, before I let you go. And this is something that I think won't happen for many, 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 emphasis on many, many, many years. And I think it's going to touch into your Christian background. I want you to pretend for a moment that you woke up and you're dead. And you're
Okay.
thinking, well, okay,
Okay.
my day's not going to get any worse than this, right? So next thing you know, you're standing in line at heaven's gate
Yeah.
and you kind of look down and you recognize some of these faces and you're wondering what the hell they doing here. But I digress. You look forward to the gate and you see St. Peter
Yeah.
and he's got his iPad and he's looking at something and then he points at you and he says, Dan, come over here, young man. And you walk over, you're standing beside him. And then you realize he's revealing your life story. Every one of these things that he's flicking through is a little video snapshot of something that's happened to you. And he looks you right in the eye and he says, Dan, not today. Not today. There's something you have not done yet. What's that thing Dan hasn't done yet?
Well, since I went through that already in 2019 and literally in my unconscious mind, going through the fact that I was walking up to the gate and getting ready to step into heaven and literally told it is literally in my mind. And what was told to me, which was very real to me even to this day, was I was told it's not my time yet. You're going back. And I came back. And, so and being very sincere, what was the purpose of me coming back? What was, if it's not my time, then what is my purpose? And so I really vacillated a lot on that question. You're hitting something that's very important to me because I thought, okay, well, why did I come back? What is it? Is it for my kids? Is it for my wife? Is it for my business? And what I've come to determine isn't that I needed to do one thing more or to do something special more, but it was continuing down the path that I was going about what I was doing and continue to providing not just the services, but the commitments that I have to all the people that are around me. And it wasn't necessarily that I had to do something special. It was more just keep doing the right thing that you're doing because you have so much more to give. And it actually motivated me to do more. In other words, what more can now what more can I do? Because I feel like and in honor of the World Cup, which I got to go to Seattle and watch the World Cup. I watched Iran play Egypt at the World Cup in Seattle in their Superdome, which was interesting all in its own. But I realized that my life is like a soccer game. The first 90 minutes went by, and now the referee walks out there, holds up the placard. I've got extra time. So my life now is on the extra time. I don't know when that's going to expire. They didn't put a number there, but I know that now I'm on extra time. So now it's as you watch in the soccer game, even as of last night, that extra time, the players kind of ramp up their pace and try to do more and try to score more and be more active. So that's where I'm at in my life right now is now that God's given me another opportunity to have my feet on the ground, literally, walking, literally, then what is it that now I can do with the extra time that I've given to further give back to all the things that have been given to me? I've lived a blessed life in so many different ways and been honored in so many different things. And it again pales in comparison to what I can give back to other people to make their life more successful.
It's good that you said you feel like the soccer game and not the ball that's getting the shit kicked out of it.
Well, that's the daily routine. The ball is
Yeah.
the instrument in which we have to work in. That doesn't mean that I don't get up and
Oh, man.
have to be kicked around a little bit in order to be able to feel it.
Well, Dan, my new friend, thank you for taking time out today. Anything that I didn't touch on? Any parting words that you want to leave with the builders listening in?
No, I just want to say thank you for what you do. I think that your ability to be able, I got an opportunity to see some of your stuff. Of course, Before I do anything, I try to do some research too and find out who the person I'm going to be speaking with and, what, don't take this the wrong way, but I want to make sure that I'm a part of something that's beneficial and not something that's going to be misconstrued or my words, which I've had happen, parsed away and then used against me. So I want to thank you for what you do. I think that it's important that, you hear from industry leaders, you hear from individuals that are in this particular business and you kind of get their philosophy, their mindset, and then also too, where they see the journey going for the rest of the builders coming up because in the future, this information is going to be valuable to somebody. And I want to say this for everybody that's out there that's listening to me and heard what I've had to say. Thank you for taking that time. I mean, because the one thing that again on extra time, the thing that I've recognized is the most valuable asset that we have above all other things, money, relationships, they pale in comparison to time. And those of you that are out there that are running the rat race that may be a lot younger than I am, time may be on your side right now, but there's going to be a time when it's not. So value each and every single moment of time because you're not guaranteed tomorrow and you're not guaranteed that what you're doing today, you'll be able to do tomorrow. So every moment of time that you have today, make sure that you use it wisely. And the fact that you spent this time to listen to me, to do this, I just want to personally say thank you. And thank you for what you do. I mean, again, you're an asset to the industry, and I really appreciate what you're doing for all of us.
Thanks, my friend. I look forward to connecting with you in Tennessee. I'll even bring my banjo down with me.
Deal. Done deal.
Thanks for listening to Builder Straight Talk. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. Until next time, keep building smarter. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.